Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. Hello, welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It is Monday, July 22nd. This is episode 118. Don Harris, Chuck McIntyre, Matt Roy. Hello, how is everybody today?
Hi, Matt.
Hi.
Hello, Matthew.
Very official. You guys and my mom call me Matthew. Everyone else, it's Matt, unless I'm in trouble.
Well, you're usually in trouble with us.
Thankfully, that's not that true.
You're never in trouble, Matt. You're a rock star.
We have a lot going on. I don't know why I put this right here. We have a lot going on today. We got Spurs, more Spurs trade rumors, another player connected with the Spurs. So we'll talk about Cam Johnson, maybe the acquisition of a three-point threat for the Spurs. They finished up their summer league as well this past weekend. They looked really good too. 4-1 in the summer league. Ended up only losing to the Sixers on Friday night. So we'll talk about that. Plus, Cowboys training camp. Football's here, fellas. Football is here. They're traveling out. Jerry's press conference is not going to happen on Wednesday. Going to happen on Saturday because he's got more important things to do.
He's got contracts to negotiate.
That might be good. He's got
he's
got some stuff to do. There's a cloud the size of a 6'2", 200-pound receiver.
He's got an illegitimate daughter trial going on.
Yeah, he's got a lot going on. There's a cloud the size of a BB lamb hanging over the Cowboys camp. So we'll talk about all that stuff, the main storylines of Cowboys camp coming up. But first, I want to start with our trivia question. Trivia question is, Chuck, I expect that you'll know some of this. Tom Landry has the 5th most wins as a head coach all time. Can you name the 4 who have more? This includes regular and postseason, and it includes all of the NFL and post-NFL AFL mergers. So this goes back to the 1920s.
LeBron James. I'll go with Belichick for one.
Well, we're gonna give everyone time to think about it.
That's all I got.
There's 4 coaches.
So leave the rest of the playing field open for everybody.
More wins than Tom Landry. We'll come back after we talk about the Spurs. We'll do that in just a couple of segments. But the question, Tom Landry has the 5th most wins as a head coach all time. Can you name the 4 who have more? So we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, let's start with the Spurs. So the Spurs are connected to Cam Johnson this week. And what's being dangled and what we kind of floated out there last week, what's been in the media a lot.
Okay, how have they been connected?
There's been reports that the Spurs are interested.
By who?
There multiple people in the sports
really?
media. Yes.
Okay.
So what's being dangled is Keldon Johnson. What you also floated out there last week. What we're all suspecting is that Keldon is the one on the trading block if they're going to acquire another person.
Before we get into this, can I just say that last week on this podcast, I said I got a hunch, just a feeling that the Spurs might be shopping Keldon.
Yeah.
Okay. That became fodder for the entire internet, picked up by bloggers or whoever. What do they call them? Aggregators?
Columnists?
Mm-hmm. Aggregators. That Don Harris and Chuck McIntyre say the Spurs are actively shopping Keldon Johnson, which is not true. We don't know that. I didn't know that. I certainly wouldn't report that on television. I said on a podcast, I had a hunch that they might be shopping Keldon. That turns into the Spurs are shopping Keldon as a fact. That's why I said by who. How are they connecting this to Cam Johnson? Just because some aggregator says he's heard through the grapevine. So take this with a grain of salt. This is just fun talk rumors. The thing
I like about this one is just let's look at this on the surface, right? Who's making more money?
Cam Johnson.
Correct. Who's the better player?
Debatable.
I don't think so. I think it's Keldon. Or okay, we'll just put it this way. Who's the better scorer?
Well, he's gotten more minutes on a bad team. He had to score.
Yeah, but Cam Johnson, too, he had a good year last year, but
I mean,
he played in fewer games. He's 28 years old.
I don't disagree with you.
So again, on the surface, it doesn't make any sense to me unless you're trying to do the player a solid, in this particular case, Keldon, because maybe Keldon views himself as something other than a guy coming off the bench.
They're both very...
And maybe he can get more playing time.
Here.
So, again, I don't know what's going on.
I echo that sentiment.
Thank you. So, I don't know. But the spitballing that goes on this time of year, I mean, I'm here for it. It creates general interest in everything, right? It gets us talking. But again, to analyze this at its most basic form, I just don't know that you're getting value for value unless you're trying to do Keldon a solid because he thinks he's a starter and maybe the organization thinks that he's not a starter.
Okay, who has the shorter contract? Because the money's similar.
They're both 3 years. They both have 3 years left.
Okay.
So
and the only thing that I said last week was I think they might be shopping Keldon for an equal player with a different skill set, either a backup big or a 3-point shooter.
Which Cameron Johnson is a better 3-point shooter.
Right. So if they're really looking for 3-point shooting and Keldon really is looking to start, and this is a win-win for both, the money's fairly similar, then I can see it as a possibility. But I think Chuck's right that Keldon's probably the better player.
If they're just looking for raw, talented players, I don't know if they're getting the better player if they trade for Cam Johnson. One Johnson for the other. I mean, if you're just looking for raw, talented players, like I printed, Javier, can you pull this up real quick? I put this on Spurs reference, or excuse me, basketball reference. So you can look at the statistics right there. Keldon is the leading scorer. He leads in rebounds. He leads in assists. He basically has the same steals and blocks. He has a better field goal percentage. The only thing that Cam is better at is 3-point shooting and free throw shooting. That's the only thing. But even if you look at their player efficiency ratings, Cam Johnson is a less efficient player than Keldon Johnson. He also is less durable than Keldon Johnson. Keldon has played in 69, 75, 63, 69 games. Cam has played in the most 66 games in one season, and that was, I think it was a couple of years ago. He played in 58 last year. He was injured. He's injured every single year. So if you look at things just person for person, I don't even think, unless you're doing Keldon a solid, unless you're being like, okay, you're going to go get more playing time somewhere else. We don't have that for you here because now we have Harrison Barnes. Now we have all of these guys who are in front of you. We're going to do you a favor and trade you somewhere else where you can play more minutes. But I don't understand from a Spurs standpoint, unless you're doing that, this trade wouldn't make any sense. Unless it's exactly player for player, you're trading one for the other.
And from the beginning, when I discredited the source, I think some basketball blogger threw this out there with the idea that the Spurs might want to give up Keldon and then require 2 Spurs draft picks instead of the other way around. Like I could see the Spurs wanting to do this if they could pick up one of those Knicks picks. Didn't Brooklyn get a ton of picks in that Knicks trade?
Yeah, they got like 7.
So they got picks to give away. So if the Spurs could do it, pick up Cam Johnson and a pick, okay, I can see the Spurs wanting to do that.
But the Nets will never do that because they're in full rebuild mode. They're trying to offload Cam Johnson because they see him as valuable. So why would the Spurs trade a player that is better than Cam Johnson and a pick for a player that they think is worse? And also, why would the Nets trade for a player that they might think is better, but why would they trade a pick when they're in full rebuild mode? Neither side makes sense. And I'm not saying it does. Like bringing this up, I'm not saying that it makes sense at all, but both things just don't gel unless they're trying to just help Keldon.
Hey, so if I read all three of you guys right, this would not make the Spurs a better team. A straight up trade between these two would not make the Spurs a better team.
It depends. I mean, that's like Don said, if you get draft picks,
it might make them a better team from the 3-point shooting standpoint too. Because if that's just what they're trying to add, but I thought they should have gone for.
But yeah, I mean, if you're talking
Luke
player
Kennard
for player,
but also
I don't think it is.
But he's also $7 million or $4 million more expensive, depending on which year of the contracts you're looking at.
It's not shorter.
He's 4 years older, so he's going to be older in. He's going to be 31 by the time the deal's over.
He's not on an expiring contract.
No, it's just I don't know if it matches up with the timeline they want. It's just a lot of it doesn't make sense. Plus, Keldon brings a lot of intangibles that Cam Johnson might not bring. He's kind of the emotional leader of this team, or he has been for the last couple of years, even though he bit somebody. Like he didn't need to do that, but it's an accident, obviously.
Hey, and Carsick Collin has a comment in here talking about the dumb number 3 jersey fake controversy. Is there any kind of controversy?
Not yet.
Keldon's gonna okay.
Not yet.
I think Keldon's gonna give up number 3, but
he has to.
Yeah, right.
He's not CP. He's CP3. He has to be number 3. Like, There's no controversy there, in my opinion. Unless maybe that's why they trade Keldon.
Yeah. Right.
I think that
he refused to give up his number, so they're going to trade him and get less value.
Yeah. Grand scheme of things, Keldon, if they're going to trade somebody, and your guys' overarching point last week was I said that they were probably done building. You guys both think that they're not done building, which I think is fair. They might have another move or two up their sleeve, but it has to be a move that makes sense. This move, unless you're trying to help Keldon, does not make sense. And
we all agree.
That's just the brass.
I think so
Moving
too.
on.
Plus the internet police in all this, right, said there were multiple teams in on the Cam Johnson game. So
let them get them.
Of course they're going to throw the Spurs in that mix. This is what you do to create interest in a lot of markets, and probably has some modicum of truth to it that agents will call somebody and say, hey, I'm hearing this or whatever. That's how things get going. And it's up to the aggregator or the reporter to decide if in fact they think that this has got enough inertia behind it to make it something that maybe it isn't.
And we're also looking at the roster right now. Keldon's what, the 8th guy? Like, he's not even the 6th man right now off the bench. I think Trey would be the first guy off the bench, depending on the position that you're subbing in for. Like, Keldon might be the 3rd guy off the bench right now. Where would Cam Johnson fit into that? Would he immediately become the 6th? Like, I don't think that he's going to be the best option coming off the bench, even if they traded for him. So it's just
Isn't Castle the 6th man?
I mean, Trey, that's what I'm saying, though. You have so many options off the bench right now. Even if you traded for Cam Johnson, are you getting rid of a couple of those guys to make more room for those minutes? Like, it doesn't make – there's a lot of congestion on the bench right now. So one other way to help build a team is to build it with young guys that you see in the Summer League. And this week we saw in the Summer League that there's a lot of talented players on the Spurs roster. What did you guys think from the talented – in the Summer League sense? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of guys that can play very good basketball, and
there's a lot of guys that can play pick up AAU slop ball.
Okay, but there's some guys. Riley Minix performed extremely well.
Agreed.
Jameer Bouye performed extremely well.
Agreed.
CD Sissoko, I thought, did pretty well as well, showing what he liked. So that's why I want to ask, what is your guys' main takeaways from the 5 games they played in Vegas? And also you can kind of couple that with the Sacramento, California league that they played as well.
I expected more out of CD. I think he's a really good athlete. I think he's going to be a really good player. And I didn't see as much of that. As blown away by the maturity of Castle. And I think they were too. I think that's why they cut it short. Other than the wrist thing, yeah. Donovan Williams is a freaky good athlete. I don't know what kind of basketball player he is, but he showed signs of incredible athleticism. Bouye's a player.
I thought Bouye looked really good.
He's a player.
He's fast, man.
He's on their he's already on their roster as a 2-way contract. He's really good. And I don't think the Minix kid can make the roster. I don't think any of them can make the roster other than Bouye as a 2-way player. But their 15-man roster is locked and loaded and set, and none of these 3 or 4 guys are gonna crack that.
Yeah,
I think they saw what we saw, which was after those first couple games in Sacramento. It's like, we got to get some other guys in here. This is embarrassing.
Yeah,
I mean, it was. Those first 2 games were. I don't even know what the hell that was. But they did. To your point, Don, I thought the Williams kid, he looks great. That was one of the guys that they brought in before they went to Vegas. The Minix kid, although he appears like he's got heavy feet, looks like he knows how to play basketball, right? He's crafty. He works well in confined areas. He caught my eye too, but other than that, the fall can't get here soon enough.
We saw a lot. We've seen a lot of this, right, over the course of time, where a Minix becomes a Drew Eubanks. Mm-hmm. When we first saw Drew Eubanks in the Summer League, we didn't expect him to make a roster. A couple years later, he makes a roster. Then he makes another team's roster. Then he plays valuable minutes for another team. So I'm not saying this Minix kid isn't an NBA player down the road. I just don't think he's a Spur this year.
Not to be confused with our guy, Jason Minix. No relation.
Correct. Well, that we know of.
Not that we know of. Yeah, he hasn't told me anything.
Yeah,
at least.
Me neither.
I thought that the one guy that really popped off the screen was Bouye. Bouye, he performed extremely well. I don't know if there's a roster spot for him this year. He's probably going to spend some more time in Austin, maybe get a little cameo at the end of the season, midway through the season. If
he did that last year.
And if they have some injuries, he could definitely come up. He seems like that 16th, 17th guy on a roster instead of a 15-man. But he's an extremely interesting talent, I would just say, because of the skill set that he has. He's extremely quick. He played good defense. He has good court vision. He can score too. I mean, he's a very good quick scorer. Do you think that CD showed enough to make this roster and place good minutes this season?
Yeah, of course. He's going to be in the rotation. He'll probably be the 8th guy. But CD, Pop loves him.
Pop really does love him. I keep going back to that sound that we had last week when Pop was just waxing rhapsodic about CD, and it was incredible to hear what he thinks of him.
His physical, when you see the kid in person up close, the physical frame that he has and the motor that he has, he just needs time. He just needs time and minutes. He's going to be a player.
Hey, Colin disagrees in the comments. He says CD was really bad. Defense was exceptional, but he has no clue how to play in the half court at all.
He's learning.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's young.
He's learning, but he has really good court vision. You see he sees the floor very, very well for somebody who's only in their second year. Even Pop acknowledges he has to improve his shot significantly.
His body's way ahead of his head.
Yeah,
he's just he's a freaky good athlete.
He's kind of like Jeremy. Like he's not the best basketball IQ wise, but he has all the tools to get there. And basketball IQ is something you can teach. However, court vision and sense of awareness on the court seems to be kind of intrinsic in nature, and CD definitely has that. Bob, anything else before we move on?
No, we're ready.
All right, let's go to the trivia answer. All right, everyone hopefully got their answers in. Tom Landry has the 5th most wins as the head coach all time. Can you name the 4 who have more?
We're going to go with together. Chuck and I are a team on this.
All right.
We're going to go with
one at a time.
Hints.
One at a time.
We're going to go with Belichick.
We'll do Belichick for sure.
All right.
I'm going to go.
Belichick's right.
I'm going to say Shula.
Good one.
Going with Shula?
Yeah. So we need 2 more. I'm going to go with Andy Reid.
That's a good one, dude. Nice. Well played.
Locking it in?
Yeah.
Andy Reid.
Is there that? Oh.
Andy Reid has 284.
So what does that mean?
So he is 4th.
Okay.
Right now you have 1, 2, and 4. You're missing number 3.
That old Bears coach?
Lombardi or Hallis?
Couldn't be Lombardi. I don't think he would coach long enough.
What about
you want to contribute?
What about Chuck Knoll?
What about Curly Lambeau?
Hold on, Bob has an idea.
It's Hallis, but I don't remember his first name.
George.
Yeah, I'm sure it's him.
You're sure it's Hallis?
Who? We got any other guesses in the comments here?
I'm gonna go off this. I'm gonna push Bob to the side, although that's a good guess. And I'm gonna go pretty confidently with Chuck Knoll.
Is it just because Chuck's here?
Yeah, it could be.
Are you saying no?
In the comments, we got
no. I'm saying I honestly don't know.
Sorry,
go ahead.
No.
In the comments, we got Colin saying Bill B and Shula for sure.
Yeah, those are 1, 2. Bill has 333. Shula has 347. Anyone else? So we're going with Chuck Knoll. That's your guess?
All right, I'll go with Chuck Knoll too.
You have a different guess?
It's Knoll, Hallis, or Lombardi.
Do we have Hallis on there?
You haven't guessed Hallis yet.
All right, well, I'll say Hallis then as the contrarian.
I'm going with Knoll.
And Bob's going with Hallis as well, right?
Yeah.
All right. Knoll is incorrect.
Damn it.
Chuck Knoll is phone just closed. Chuck Knoll is 8th. But George Hallis is correct. George Hallis is number 3 with
Cyber Bob got that.
Cyber Bob for the win.
He's sitting in front of the computer.
Anytime you pick anything to do with the Steelers,
George Hallis has 324. So it's Shula, then Belichick, then Hallis, then Andy Reid, then Tom Landry. These are regular season and postseason wins. So Andy Reid, 284. He could coach for another 5 years and end up winning all this stuff. Yeah. So Curly Lambeau is 6th. Paul Brown is 7th. Chuck Knoll is 8th.
Paul Brown, good one.
Chuck Noll is 8th. Marty Schottenheimer,
Yeah.
RIP, is 9th, and Dan Reeves is number 10 at 201. So did you guys know that Mike McCarthy is up at 170? He's like 17th all time.
I thought you were going to say, did you know that Marty Schottenheimer was Mike McCarthy's mentor at a very early stage of his coaching career?
I was not going to say that. No.
Okay, that's where I thought you were going with this. So I was
Mike McCarthy.
a bit flummoxed when you went the direction you did.
Mike McCarthy is 178, tied with Mike Shanahan for 17th. If he wins more than 6 games this year, which God, I hope that they win more than 6 games this year, he'll go up to number 11, or excuse me, number 12.
Wow, that's impressive.
Passing Bill Parcells with 183. So anyway, that was a good little segue into the Cowboys. So Cowboys training camp starting this week. Our guy Zach Hedrick, Jack Green out there for us. You can catch all their reports at 9 o'clock on Fox SA and 5, 6, and 10 every day on News 4. And
if you're in Austin, at 6 and 10 on CBS Austin.
KI, yeah. They have so many storylines going in, but for me, I think it rhymes with BB Bam is their biggest storyline. They have a 6'2", 200-foot cloud hanging over this training camp, and he's not going to be there. CeeDee Lamb is probably not going to show up to training camp until he gets a new deal, and I don't blame him one bit for that. What does that say about, one, the roster status, or excuse me, the contract status, and 2, does it hurt them that he's not going to be there to start?
Nah. I mean, training camp's training camp. Guys always acclimate pretty quickly when they do get in. And again, I don't see Jerry Jones from all the talk budging, with this whole thing, with this whole new philosophy of we're just going to roll the dice, which means they're both going to be signed by the second week of camp.
I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot that can happen between now and Thursday, first off. But I thought it was interesting this week, though, like there have been some revelations. Zach Martin saying last year when he held out and missed a bunch of days, padded practices, that he felt like that actually did hurt him and his performance during the course of the year. So I think there is benefit for CeeDee Lamb to be there. And I think another thing that I thought was interesting this week was the revelation that CeeDee's contract status is above everybody else's at this point. I thought that was a given, right? I mean, well, he's earned the right to get paid like a grade A player, and he's not going to go to camp with 1 year left on his contract. This is standard operating procedure. He's been patient, waiting to get his bag. It's time for him to get his bag, and then everybody can wait after CeeDee Lamb, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, a couple of things with that. Dak's going to be there. His contract,
he's under contract.
He's under contract. So CD, but Dak's going to be there because he knows he has all the leverage. It doesn't really matter if he gets hurt or not. Plus, he's already said he's going to be there. So CD is obviously going to take a back seat because he's not there. So his contract is going to go first anyway.
Wait. Why, as far as the injury thing, why are they different?
Because Dak has all the leverage no matter what.
Leverage doesn't get you insurance.
He's going to get paid regardless. If he tears his ACL in training camp, he'll still get paid. CD is different. He'll get paid by the Cowboys. They'll take care of him no matter what.
Dak?
Yes, because even if he gets hurt, they still have a $40 million dead cap next year. He has them bent over a barrel no matter what.
Okay.
He does. You're right. But at some point, you have to do what Charles Haley said, which is it's time to pay the price for all of these decisions that you've made contractually with Dak. And it will be fascinating to see because there are a million reasons for them to be incentivized to extend Dak, right? Specifically what you said about the dead cap money. However, at some point, you have to move on and realize that you're going to have to flip the script.
The Packers did, right?
And look at how quickly they turn things around.
Yeah.
But look how quickly now they are back in the same kind of situation the Cowboys are in.
Jordan
Love says he's not coming to camp without a new deal. This is how the game is played.
Chuck, to your point, though, about Jerry and how these contracts usually work. When it was you and I on the podcast last year, when Zach Martin was holding out, and we were all like, oh, what's going to happen? Is he going to hold out into the season? We've seen it before. Emmitt Smith was paid. Zach Martin was paid.
Miles Austin was paid.
Yes,
you can go right down the list
of every single person that Jerry has caved on, and he's going to cave on CeeDee Lamb as well, whether it's the first week of training camp, whether it's the third week of training camp.
But does he cave on both?
Right. So that's fair.
He's going to give Dak and CD
That's
both
fair.
a contract.
I think to Don's point, like CD has earned the right to get paid like the rest of those guys at this point. Dak has already been paid like that. So the question becomes, will Jerry give him another huge bag like that? I don't know. I really don't know at this point.
I don't know either.
With CD not being there, though, it opens up a lot of opportunity. One of the huge questions coming into this training camp is who the hell else do they have on the offense? You have Brandon Cooks, you have CeeDee Lamb, question mark. So what opportunity in training camp does this now give to a Jalen Tolbert, a Kevontae Turpin, any of those guys?
There's a third guy, Proctor. Is it who's the guy that starts with a P?
Chuck, what does the opportunity look like with CeeDee Lamb sitting out, giving those opportunities to the younger guys now to find out who that 3 receiver is, because Michael Gallup's not there anymore, taking up time.
Right. Well, that's because Jalen Tolbert made a huge leap between year 1 and year 2. That's why Gallup isn't there any longer. And, again, I know I was really hard on Kevontae Turpin, especially early. It's like there's no doubting his athleticism. And he, too, has made incremental leaps. And you can tell that they like him. I'm not saying he's going to be a number 3 or 4 receiver, but he's a nice plan D or E if things were to go really wonky here. But again, you're going to have Jalen Tolbert really take a step up. I think at this point, Brandon Cooks is who he is. He's a solid NFL receiver. But even with all of the stuff going on with CD, I mean, we're not even talking about the running back room and how that potentially might look. There are so many question marks on this Cowboys offense that it's almost going to have to be, they're going to have to do it differently than they may have done it last year, maybe a lot differently than they did it last year. And then B, they're really going to need the defense to be like at an elite level. Even, they were a top 5 defense last year. They're going to have to be even better this year.
You mentioned the running backs. That was another question I had for you. The running back situation is just a cluster bleep. I mean, you don't know who's going to be the number 1 back. Are you really going to have Zeke Elliott be the number 1 back as you go into the year?
I think it'll be committee. It's
going to be committee, but he's going to be the starter probably. And then you're going to have like a 40-40-20 split, like almost like it kind of reminds me of the 2007 Giants when they had Ahmad Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs, and then the third guy that I can never remember his name of, kind of like the thunder and lightning and rain kind of thing. Is that going to work?
Sounds like a song.
Is that going to work though in this day?
I mean, again, I think that's why training camp is going to be so important, right? Because we're not even talking about the fact that they also have 2 rookie offensive linemen. One is learning a new position at center. So you had Beebe and Guyton in this mix, and it kind of reminds me of where the Texans were last year at this time, which was there are too many question marks that you could see going the other way for the Texans to succeed, but yet the Texans answered every single question mark and then overcame all those injuries to do what they did. So, again, we'll just be keeping an eye on it and see how things develop. But this feels a lot like the Texans did last year at this time.
Did you find who you were looking for?
Yeah, I think it was the Crooms. Crooms.
All right.
Corey
now
Crooms.
that we've moved on from receivers.
Yes.
But I'm fascinated because the Cowboys have a receiver on their roster named Cam Johnson.
That's who we should have talked about earlier.
Right. Well,
that's who Keldon
can't fit him under the cap either.
Yeah. Talking about the other major storyline to me, Chuck and Don, and I think that we talked about this a lot when we were going through OTAs and stuff, is the young guys. DeMarvion Overshown.
Yep.
Osa Odigizua, Mozzie Smith, Sam Williams, Tyler Smith, Tyler Guyton, Cooper Beebe. Like, you have so many guys, so many people trying to fill in holes of veterans that have left now. The only way that the Cowboys win 12 games, the only way that they make the playoffs is if half to 3/4 of these young guys make a leap.
That's fair.
And I just don't know if you can rely on so many young, inexperienced players coming from sitting in a city right now that just saw the Spurs rely on so many young players, inexperienced players, and go 22-60. I just don't know if that's possible.
I think this is a little different in that I think, I hate to keep reverting back to the Packers, but how quickly they flipped it. I mean, that was the youngest team the NFL had seen in 6 years, and they're going to be even younger this year. So, how much wisdom is there is having a bunch of guys with bloated contracts and, all you have to do is look at the Packers and see a bunch of no names and, you've been really crafty with how you've drafted, and you got a lot of guys to step up, and you got a lot of guys to step up fast. I mean, the first 8 weeks of the season, nobody's talking about the Packers making any kind of playoff run. I mean, that looked like the worst team in football, the way they were running their offense. And then they flipped it. And then the next thing you know, they got hot. So, I mean, I think that's part of the reason why the Cowboys pivoted, because they got all that shoved in their face in that playoff game. These punk little kids came into our place and whipped our you-know-whats. And, well, look how they're doing business. They don't have an overbloated contract here, there, anywhere, or all these guys that, quote-unquote, have skins on the wall. And so now the pressure's on McCarthy on a one-year deal to do it and prove it. Same thing with Dak. Do it or prove it. Or we're going to do changes and flip this thing, because the Packers have shown you can do it in a relatively short period of time.
I've been saying it for 2 years, too. Baker Mayfield going to Tampa, you don't have to have a $40 million quarterback. You don't have to have he's won 60. So
he's going to make 60 no matter where he goes. He's going to probably make 50.
That's insane.
60.
It's just insane.
Last thing about Cowboys training camp, the other question I have is there's no Stephon Gilmore, and he was one of the big pickups last year. They still might sign him in free agency. You don't know if he's going to be there or not once they see and evaluate the talent they do have. But now you might have a full year of Trayvon Diggs across from Deron Bland.
Yeah.
How does that help this defense that relies so heavily on turnover margin and on forcing mistakes, on Micah and DeMarcus Lawrence getting after the quarterback and relying on those guys on the back end to pick it off? Is that going to be a benefit for these guys? And how does that DB room kind of shape up is another question that I have when you're losing that veteran presence of Stephon Gilmore.
I don't know if it matters that much if you can't stop the run. And that's their biggest issue, is getting Micah to see himself as more than pass rushing sack king. If Michael will play in the middle and tackle, and just look at the Packers game. They just mashed them, and the Cowboys have to get tougher in the middle, and they have to stop the run. They've got some really talented corners. I like both those guys a lot, but I don't know if talking about the Cowboys defense, to me, it all starts and stops with, can they give up less than 3 yards on a carry?
Yeah.
And I think their DB room is pretty good shape. I mean, their safeties are probably a little undersized compared to where you would like them, in terms of physical stature on the back end. But, let's not forget the re-emergence of Jordan Lewis. That's one of my favorite stories. That guy had a Liz Frank injury that by some people's accounts was the worst they'd ever seen. That basically is your foot broken in half, right? Where your toe between your toes and where your ankle is.
Doesn't sound fun.
No. And then so for him to bounce back like he did, especially late in the year, that's why Gilmore's not there. And then I think they've got some other guys too that are long and athletic DBs that are going to, they're fortunate to be deep at that position. You can afford to have a couple of really cheap guys on the back end. And then if anything were to happen, I would suspect that Stephon Gilmore would be the first guy on speed dial and you sign him back to the team. Kind of on the invisible taxi squad.
I've always been a fan of Liz Frank, one of my favorite authors.
Anyway,
that was actually pretty good.
To your point about
I think Chuck dated Liz Frank once.
I don't know how to recover from that. I think we're just going to move on.
Yes.
One question from the live stream from David Wickersham, going back to the holding out stuff. He asked what you guys think. Do you feel players should play their last year of the contract before they have a right to talk about a new contract?
Depends on where they are in the deal. If it's a rookie deal, you're going into your 5th year option. No, because you need the bag. You want to get the bag before you play that 5th year.
Yeah, I think in football, for me, it's you have to do it this way because they're non-guaranteed contracts for the most part. But the other sports, I'm with whoever had that brilliant idea. These contracts don't mean squat. You sign them, and then, the player doesn't like them. The team doesn't like how you performed against the contract. It's all a big joke.
That's what a lot of fans, I'm not saying David doesn't understand, but a lot of fans don't understand. In the NFL, you get paid per game. You get a check on Monday after you play on Sunday, and you are not guaranteed another check. Now, you get your money up front in signing bonuses, But if Stephon Castle or Wemby gets hurt in year one of a 4-year deal, they get all that money.
Every cent.
Every cent. If you get hurt in the NFL, see you later, and you've got what you've gotten so far.
Yeah, like if CeeDee Lamb,
Deshaun Watson.
So we don't need to talk about your crappy quarterback. So if CeeDee Lamb, for example, came to training camp and got hurt the first day, tore his ACL, career-ending injury, he wouldn't make another cent. Like he would get what he's owed this year, the guaranteed money this year, and then he'd be done. So for things like that, like Dak, I think that Dak should play the last year of his deal because his situation is immensely. In the NFL, there's really not that big of an issue with that because of the guarantee.
Yeah,
and the way they're structured.
CD is playing under a rookie contract, and I think most would agree he has outperformed
big time
his rookie contract.
He had 135 catches last year, 1,792 yards, and I think it was 13 touchdowns. He is the at least top 5 receiver in the NFL, and he's being paid like
a kicker.
Yeah, exactly. Not a kicker. I mean, his 5th-year option's pretty good.
He's a guy you want on your team for more than just catching footballs too. Yep. So
the question is,
he's earned it.
The question is,
he's the best player on their team if it's not Parsons.
Agree.
He's the first or second best player on the team.
Bob, anything else?
We're good.
All right. When we come back on Thursday, we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about, especially Cowboys.
We're coming back on Thursday?
Sadly, yeah.
So soon?
Unfortunately. We're going to have so much stuff to talk about. It's going to be so much fun. I'm not even going to mention Cam Johnson. I can't promise that.
Which one? The
Cowboys I was going to say, I don't know which one I'm going to mention. I'm going to get one of them in there, though. That's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We'll be back on Thursday. We have AAC Media Day tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit of UTSA. We're going to talk Cowboys and Houston Texans training camp. We'll probably steer away from Spurs here in the next couple of months because it's the quiet time. Yes. So that's all we got for you today. Everyone, see you on Thursday.
Peace and fish grease.